Browns players are finally reacting to the blockbuster trade that sent Myles Garrett to Los Angeles. Losing the face of the franchise has left the locker room shaken. Let's get into the news and the bold prediction one veteran defender made about how this move could reshape Cleveland's identity for years to come. Some moments in sports hit you different, not because they were unexpected, but because even when you saw them coming, you told yourself they wouldn't actually happen. For Browns fans, for Browns players, for everyone who watched Myles Garrett turn Cleveland's defense into something genuinely terrifying year after year. June 1, 2026 was one of those moments. The Cleveland Browns traded two-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year Myles Garrett to the Los Angeles Rams for two-time Pro Bowl pass rusher Jared Verse and multiple draft picks. It wasn't a rumor, it wasn't a negotiating ploy. It was done, official, real, and it landed on the NFL world like a truck. Cleveland received a first-round draft pick in 2027, a second-round pick in 2028, and a third-round pick in 2029, in what is one of the biggest trades in NFL history involving a defensive player. Those are big numbers on paper, but numbers don't suit up on Sundays. Numbers don't make the quarterback flinch before the ball is snapped. Myles Garrett did that. There's a reasonable argument to be made that Garrett is the best player to be traded in the modern NFL during the prime of his career. At 30, he was coming off 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards over the past 3 seasons. He's a 5-time first-team All-Pro, having picked up all of those honors over the past 6 seasons, and he did all of that while toiling with a Browns team that won 1 playoff game over that entire span. 1 playoff win in 6 years. Think about that. And yet Garrett showed up, put his body on the line, and kept producing at a level that defied the carnage around him. He set the NFL single-season sack record with 23 sacks this past season. The Browns were still going nowhere fast. That tension between individual dominance and team dysfunction is the thread that runs through this entire story. Now here's the thing about how players found out. When the trade broke, Garrett took to social media, thanked the Browns and their fans, saying the city of Cleveland shaped him and made me tougher, adding the best days of this franchise are ahead. Loving you is easy. Leaving you is the hard part, he wrote. It was classy. It was measured. And it told you everything you needed to know about the kind of man he is. Because trust me, there were far more pointed things he could have said. The teammates who read that post knew what it meant. And it didn't take long for voices to start coming out of Cleveland. Some directly, some through what they'd already said on record, and some through what their silence itself communicated. Denzel Ward had already spoken before the trade was even announced. When Garrett asked out of Cleveland in February 2025, Ward said, "The request has a huge impact. Honestly, I want to play with Myles Garrett." Ward got his wish for 2025 after Garrett quickly backed off his trade request to sign a contract extension. He got 1 more year. Now that year is up, and Garrett won't be there when Ward lines up in the fall. Considering Ward's relationship with Garrett, it will be interesting to hear his opinion on the trade, if he offers one publicly. His feelings on the matter aren't a mystery, though. He made them abundantly clear a year earlier. The trade he feared came true. And then there was head coach Todd Monken. Now, Monken is a first-year head coach in Cleveland, brand new first season. You'd think he'd have been sold on the idea that the franchise's best player was part of his roster. Browns' first-year head coach Todd Monken told reporters on Monday that he received no assurances that Garrett would be on the roster in 2026 when he took the job in Cleveland. Read that again. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns was never told Myles Garrett would be there. "No, I wasn't assured that when I took the job," Monken said. "I was never assured of anything when I took the job, other than once I signed my contract. Whatever my contract said, that's what I was assured." That quote hit different. It's hard not to look at this as anything other than a white flag moment by GM Andrew Berry and owner Jimmy Haslam entering Monken's first season. The new head coach never got so much as a face-to-face meeting with Garrett, and now he'll enter the meat of the offseason program without the NFL's single biggest game record. So let's set the stage properly. The man leading the Browns never sat across from Garrett. The team's longest tenured defender watched his closest running mate get shipped to Los Angeles, and the front office that spent months telling everyone Garrett was untouchable quietly pulled the trigger the moment the calendar gave them a cap advantage to do it. This isn't just a trade story, it's a loyalty story. And the silence, and the not-so-silent reactions from inside that building, tell you exactly how it felt. To understand why Browns players and insiders reacted the way they did, you have to go back a year, because the ground for this earthquake was laid a long time ago. After a putrid 3-14 season in 2024, Garrett demanded a trade out of Cleveland during Super Bowl week. That wasn't just a player venting, that was a player. The franchise's best player, standing up publicly and saying, "This isn't working, I need to leave." That takes courage, and it takes real pain to get there. His frustrations ran deeper than just wins and losses. When Garrett was playing through injuries to both feet, a thigh and an Achilles, he told reporters how bothered he was that certain Browns teammates weren't giving better energy. He said he'd called out offensive teammates for their body language, and no one could be surprised by his frustrations, as many fans had the same ones. Here's a man dragging himself through the season on a broken body, calling out the people next to him for not caring enough, and watching the wins never come. The frustration was real, layered, and completely earned. Garrett wants to compete for a Super Bowl, so it was perplexing when he signed a 4-year, $160 million extension with the Browns in 2025. The extension came months after he requested a trade, on the premise that he had a desire to win. The Browns were in quarterback purgatory at the time. That extension was the peace offering. Cleveland essentially said, "Stay, we'll pay you, we're committed to building around you," and Garrett stayed. He did more than stay. He delivered with 23 sacks in 2025 to set a new record. He held up his end of the deal. The question was always whether the organization would hold up theirs. Garrett also saw the Browns pass on adding a quarterback this offseason, with an uninspiring Deshaun Watson Shedeur Sanders position battle commencing. That's the image you need to hold in your head. The best defensive player on the planet, playing for a team, with a quarterback situation so muddled, even the coaching staff couldn't pretend it wasn't a problem. And then came Andrew Berry, standing at a podium in March, looking the media dead in the eye. "Myles is a career Brown," Berry said. "He is one of the faces of our organization. I think we've been very clear, both past and present, in terms of our goals." A career Brown, those words, said with a straight face just weeks before the phone calls with the Rams got serious. Last offseason, Berry refused to trade Garrett, claiming that the future Hall of Famer had a direct path from Cleveland to Canton. Now that path goes through Los Angeles. In Berry's statement following the trade, he acknowledged being stuck at a crossroads. "As discussions intensified, we were stuck at a legitimate crossroads. Do we hold on to a truly generational player who has become the identity of our team? Or do we make the difficult decision that we think is best for the organization over the long run?" It's a reasonable question. In the cold logic of a rebuild, it even makes sense. But when you've been telling the world and telling your players that a certain man isn't going anywhere, and then he goes, the trust damage runs much deeper than any pick can fix. Per a team source, this was a Rams-specific deal, because the Rams hounded Cleveland for a while. They didn't stop. They kept the pressure on. And eventually, the Browns found a number they couldn't say no to. What made the timing even more jarring was the cap maneuvering that preceded it. Months before the trade, Cleveland quietly restructured Garrett's contract. The Browns adjusted Garrett's contract to pay his option bonuses just a week before the start of the regular season, rather than 15 days after the new league year. Garrett's pay did not change a cent, but it did make trading him far more digestible for the Browns. The contract tweak lowered what would have otherwise been a $64.5 million dead cap hit in 2026. So when Berry was standing there saying Myles was a career Brown, the organization was already tweaking the contract language to make a trade easier. Then again, Berry and many media reports denied that Garrett would be traded. Before Monday's news, the denial and the preparation were running in parallel. And the people inside that building felt that, here's the thing, people keep dancing around but need to say out loud. Myles Garrett didn't get traded because he wasn't good enough. He didn't get traded because the Browns had a better option. He got traded because the franchise was still bleeding from a wound it inflicted on itself. A wound named Deshaun Watson. The Browns pushed all their chips in on Watson in 2022, sending significant draft capital to the Houston Texans and handing him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract. The move was supposed to give Cleveland the franchise quarterback, needed to maximize a roster that featured Garrett, Nick Chubb, and one of the NFL's most talented defenses. That was the plan. Give the defense's alpha the quarterback he deserved. Win now. Watson never delivered, and the dead cap consequences have been catastrophic. Between Watson and Garrett, the Browns will be on the hook for $101.5 million in dead money in 2027. That's not a typo. $101 million dead, gone. for players who either aren't on the team or never fulfilled the promise they were brought in for. That's the financial crater that swallowed Myles Garrett's future in Cleveland. Jimmy Watkins of Cleveland.com summed up the weight of the moment for Berry. Andrew Berry just became the man who traded for Deshaun Watson and traded away Myles Garrett, and yes, these things are related. Fans saw it clearly. One fan put it bluntly. The Cleveland Browns squandered prime Myles Garrett, prime Nick Chubb, prime David Njoku, prime Joel Bitonio, and a prime top 5 defense, plus more, for Deshaun Watson. Worst of all, the people making these decisions are still in charge. That's the sentence that's been circling Cleveland sports media since the trade dropped. And you can feel the weight of it. Another fan said, "Do you understand how embarrassing it is that Deshaun Watson is on this team and Myles Garrett is not? I bet the season tickets are flying off the shelves. Embarrassing, unserious franchise." The Browns have a quarterback battle between Watson and Shedeur Sanders that may yield a winner later this month under Monken. The Browns have won just 8 games since going to the playoffs in the 2023 season. 8 games in that entire stretch. And now their best player, the one who kept showing up through all of it, is suiting up for a team that's already hosting the Super Bowl. The Browns would see a massive dead money hit in 2027, when the Watson dead cap era begins. Assuming Cleveland designates Watson as a post-June 1 cut next year, it'll bring an $86.2 million dead money bill, split between 2027 and 2028. Adding Garrett's dead money would create a more daunting task for Monken, who will presumably be the coach stuck with the Watson fallout. So Monken walked into Cleveland, knowing none of it was his fault, and all of it was now his problem. The new head coach of the Browns takes over a rebuild. loses the best player in the building before the season even starts, and gets told by ownership he was never promised Garrett would be there. It's a curious approach for a franchise that just hired a 60-year-old head coach. The Browns were obviously not about to enter 2026 as a Super Bowl contender like the Rams, but a winning season, 10 wins, that seemed possible, given their favorable schedule in the second half of the year, with the league's most dominant defensive player in the projected lineup. Now that projection is gone. The man who made it possible is gone with it. Let's give Andrew Berry this much. He didn't just hand Myles Garrett over for a bucket of picks and call it a day. The Browns told the Rams that no deal would get done without including the 25-year-old Verse. That demand, non-negotiable, take it or leave it, shaped everything that followed. Verse was the Rams' 19th overall selection in the 2024 NFL Draft. He was the AP Defensive Rookie of the Year and has been a Pro Bowler in his first 2 seasons in the league. He fits Cleveland's young roster better than Garrett did. He gives the Browns back-to-back Defensive Rookies of the Year, as linebacker Carson Schwessinger took home the award in 2025. That's a real haul. Verse is 25 years old, on a cheap contract for now, and coming off back-to-back Pro Bowls. If you're building for the next 4 to 5 years, that's exactly the kind of foundational piece you want, at the center of your defense. In a trade not involving Garrett, a player of Verse's caliber, age, and contract would likely yield a first-round pick and then some. The combination of Verse plus the picks can reasonably add up to at least 3 first-rounders. And there's the 2027 first-round pick, which isn't just any pick. Next year's quarterback class is expected to be much better than the 2024 and 2025 classes. Expect the Browns to be well represented scouting Arch Manning at Texas, Oregon's Dante Moore, and plenty of other options that could be first-round picks in 2027. The Browns now have 11 selections in the 2027 NFL Draft and could add a franchise quarterback and a lot more talent to their young base. That's the vision Berry is betting on. Not 2026, not even 2027 really. He's betting on a complete reconstruction and hoping the pieces he just acquired accelerate that timeline. But here's what the Rams got. And this is where the contrast becomes almost painful. If you're a Browns fan, if the Rams were going to add any one player to their roster in hopes of winning a championship in 2026, Garrett might have been the pick. It's fair to wonder whether he might have been the best player in football in 2025, even if he didn't generate serious MVP consideration by virtue of playing on the Browns. The best player in football on the Browns, where it didn't matter. Garrett is an impactful run defender, which will allow the Rams to play with light boxes and lean even more into their dime packages, which they ran at the highest rate in the NFL last season. And though losing Verse obviously hurts, Garrett simply projects to be an upgrade on any edge defender. If we're focusing on projected performance, all this comes as the Rams franchise is set to host Super Bowl LXI in February. At SoFi Stadium, they won Super Bowl LVI in their building following the 2021 season, and now they have a game wrecker in Garrett added to their arsenal for this title run. So while Cleveland is rebuilding around a quarterback they don't have yet, the Rams are trying to recreate history in their own building. Stafford gets his final shot, Garrett gets his first real one, and somewhere in Cleveland, the people who watched him dominate for 9 years are left to sit with that image. The 5-time first-team All-Pro, who has had double-digit sacks in every season since his second year, could retire now and be in the Hall of Fame within 5 to 7 years. But as he stated in his 2025 trade request, his goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. There is little question he will get that chance starting right away. He waited long enough. Cleveland made him wait long enough. The trade is done. Myles Garrett is a Ram. But the story in Cleveland isn't over, not by a long shot, because the man who spoke most honestly about what losing Garrett would mean to him is still sitting inside that building, and the question of what Denzel Ward does next might be the most important thing hanging over this franchise right now. With Garrett heading out of Cleveland, the Browns' longest tenured defender is now Denzel Ward. Think about that. The man who came in a year after Myles was drafted, who's been to 5 Pro Bowls alongside him, who built a partnership with him on that defense, is now the last one standing of that defensive era, and he's standing in a building that just shipped his best friend to Los Angeles. Ward's previous words hit like a freight train the moment the trade was confirmed. He didn't mince them when Garrett first requested out in 2025, and he sure didn't hedge. His sentiment was plain. I want to play with Myles Garrett. That desire now has a timestamp on it. Ward has 2 years remaining on his current contract and is still one of the NFL's best cornerbacks. He was selected to his 5th Pro Bowl last season and made it for the 3rd straight year. The Browns, for their part, came out quickly and tried to put the fire out before it spread. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported that he was told a hard no on the trade availability of Browns star cornerback Denzel Ward after the Browns sent Garrett to the Rams. But here's the thing, the whole of Cleveland understood immediately. Fans will remind management that the same thing was said about Garrett, and he is now heading to LA. That's the credibility gap Barry now has to live with. The words don't land the same anymore because they said Garrett wasn't going anywhere too. Barry and many media reports denied that Garrett would be traded before Monday's news. Like Garrett, Ward has not been present for any team activities, but noted that he will be in attendance for mandatory camp. The parallel is hard to ignore. Missing activities. A veteran with a big cap number. A front office in rebuild mode. Sound familiar? Browns insider Tony Grossi was direct about what he sees coming. Grossi posted instant takeaways in the immediate aftermath of the trade, and the one about Ward caught a lot of attention. He believes Ward could be traded by this season's trade deadline or in March of 2027. Barry still has work to do to parlay the Garrett deal into the next franchise quarterback hopeful. And Grossi noted, clock now ticking on potential Denzel Ward trade in November or March. The math on Ward makes the case even harder to argue against. Ward's contract was adjusted this offseason, but not to the full extent, which leaves him available to be traded from a salary cap perspective. As of now, he's set to cost just over $30 million against the Browns' salary cap, but the team can save over $17 million if they trade him away. The Browns aren't competing in 2026 and are looking ahead to the future. Ward won't be a part of the long-term future, and netting a day 1 or early day 2 pick for him would be a nice return. After trading Garrett, anything seems to be on the table for the Browns. A trade of Ward wouldn't be a surprise for a team openly admitting they won't be competing for much this season. And here's the broader locker room temperature to consider. Cleveland trading 2 cornerstone pieces of the defense would be a tough sell to fans. After just 8 wins combined the past 2 seasons. 8 wins, 2 seasons, 2 defensive stars on their way out. The sell to any remaining veteran in that building is getting harder and harder to make. After hiring Monken, the Browns underwent an aggressive makeover on offense, completely revamping the offensive line while adding multiple new young weapons at the skill positions. Garrett had opined about winning in recent seasons, and the Browns approached the start of this offseason in win-now mode. But it apparently wasn't enough. Garrett couldn't give Monken the benefit of a phone call to feel out the team's new direction, and now he's headed to LA, where a Super Bowl could soon be in his future. That last detail sits heavy. Myles Garrett and Todd Monken never spoke. The incoming head coach tried to get his best player on the phone, and it didn't happen. Not because Monken wasn't reaching, but because Garrett had already mentally drawn the line. When the trade came through, it wasn't a shock to the player. He was ready for the Browns, for Ward, for the players who remain, for the fans who filled that stadium. In all weathers, the reckoning is different. They're the ones left holding the pieces of an era that ended without a ring, without a run, without the ending any of them deserved. Garrett toiled with a Browns team that won 1 playoff game over a 6-year span, and he has probably already done enough to earn a spot in the Hall of Fame before taking a snap in a Rams uniform. That's the sentence that defines this whole story. The greatest player in Browns history in a generation leaves without a championship. His teammates are breaking their silence not just about a trade. They're breaking their silence about what it means to give everything to a franchise and watch it not be enough. Ward said it best when it mattered. He wanted to play with a Hall of Famer. That chance is gone. What comes next in Cleveland? Whether Ward stays or goes, whether the picks and verse become something real, whether Monken builds what Barry is promising. All of that starts from this moment, the moment the locker room changed forever.